I sat on the edge of the hospital bed, twisting the thin white blanket in my hands. My body felt hollow, like something essential had been carved out of me. The silence pressed against my chest. The nurses had stopped coming. The machines were gone. All that remained was the sound of my shallow breathing. For one fragile moment, I thought maybe Mom would hold me, maybe she'd sit beside me, stroke my hair the way she did when I was little and sick with fevers. Maybe she'd look at me like I wasn't broken. Instead, she leaned down, her lips grazing my ear with words sharper than any knife. Finally, one useless life got the message. My hands froze, my throat tightened. No tears came, my body had forgotten how to cry. Dad stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, face twisted in disgust. That womb should have closed years ago, he muttered, like I'd committed some crime against him. I wanted to scream, to rip out the four and make them see the hole inside me, the emptiness swallowing me alive, but I stayed still, staring at the blank wall, because if I spoke, if I broke, I knew they'd only laugh. And I was right. Mom let out a cold chuckle, pulling her phone from her purse. She lifted it, snapped a picture of me pale and hollow, and smirked. "Relax," she said, tapping her screen. "I'll delete it later. I just want proof that even tragedy couldn't make you worth anything." I turned my head toward her. Perfect lipstick, red nails. She looked dressed for a cocktail party, not a hospital room. Dad stepped closer, lowering his voice like he was giving advice. "Don't make this about you. Melissa's recital is tomorrow. Don't embarrass us by sulking. Nobody likes a woman who wallows in failure." Failure. That's what they called the life that slipped away before I even had a chance to hold it. My hands clenched the blanket until the stitches stretched. My body shook, not from grief anymore, but from something heavier. When the nurse returned with a chart, Mom straightened her blouse and smiled. "We're ready to take her home," she chirped. "She doesn't need pity." The nurse gave me soft eyes but didn't argue. She didn't see the knives behind their smiles. She didn't hear the poison they saved for closed doors. That night, they made me sit through dinner as if nothing had happened. Melissa twirled in her seat, gushing about her recital dress. Mom praised her for looking angelic. Dad beamed with pride, sipping his drink. Dad's eyes landed on me, narrowing like I was already a mistake he had to fix. "Don't ruin it tomorrow. Wipe those swollen eyes. People already think you're pathetic enough." Melissa smirked, stabbing her fork into her chicken. "Honestly, I don't get why she even tried to be a mother. She can't even keep a plant alive." Their laughter spilled around the table, cold and jagged, scraping against me like broken glass. I sat still. I swallowed their poison, let it cut and carve until nothing was left but silence. But in that silence, something else took root. Not grief, not weakness, something darker, a seed of rage, a seed that would not die. So while they laughed at me across the dinner table, I lowered my gaze, hiding the faint curl of a smile, because they thought I was finished. They thought they'd buried me with my baby. They had no idea I was already planning how to bury their pride. By morning, the house hummed with Melissa's excitement. She twirled in the living room, glittering gown catching the light, curls bouncing with every step. Mom hovered, fussing like a stylist, fixing straps, smoothing fabric, glowing with pride. "You're perfect, sweetheart," she cooed. "Everyone will talk about how radiant you are." Dad clapped once, like a coach approving his star player. "Don't forget the opening bow. First impressions matter." I lingered in the doorway, still in wrinkled pajamas, my body aching from loss. No one looked at me, no one asked if I'd slept. I was invisible except to Melissa. She caught my eye in the mirror and smirked. "Try not to cry during the recital. You'll scare the kids. Don't ruin the pictures." Mom laughed. "She's right. Don't sit in the front. I don't want people wondering why you look like death at a celebration." Dad adjusted his tie, giving me one sharp glance. "If you even think of making this about yourself, you'll regret it." Their words landed like knives, but this time, I didn't bleed. I just nodded, turned, and walked upstairs. My silence rattled them more than tears ever could. In my room, I opened the drawer where I'd hidden a small box. Inside were scraps I'd kept, not souvenirs, but proof. Screenshots of Mom's texts calling me a burden. A recording of Dad telling a neighbor I was worthless. Melissa's voice on video, sneering about how I failed at everything. I used to keep them just to remind myself it was real, that I wasn't imagining their cruelty. Now, staring at the evidence, I realized it wasn't just proof. It was ammunition. The recital hall overflowed with families. Children chattered, parents adjusted cameras. Melissa waited backstage, glowing, waving like a star. Mom and Dad sat in the front row, beaming with pride, their smiles polished for the crowd. I slipped into a shadowed seat at the back. The whispers began almost immediately, not about Melissa, not yet, about me. She looks pale. Didn't she just lose the baby? Why would she even show up? Each word pressed against me like a fresh bruise, but I didn't flinch. I folded my hands, kept my face blank. Because they thought I was broken. And they had no idea what was coming. When the lights dimmed and Melissa stepped onto the stage, the applause cracked like thunder. Dad leaned forward, grinning ear to ear. Mom clutched her pearls as if watching royalty. Melissa bowed, soaking in the adoration, then moved as if the world belonged to her. Every turn, every smile, every calculated gesture was flawless. The audience adored her. But I didn't see beauty. I saw arrogance wrapped in satin. I saw the same girl who laughed at my broken body, who called me unfit to live, raised by parents who worshipped her while tearing me apart. When the performance ended, the crowd roared. Melissa curtsied, scanning the audience until her eyes found mine. She wanted me to see her triumph. She wanted me to know I didn't matter. She didn't notice the fire rising behind my silence. Afterward, the lobby swelled with praise and bouquets. Mom and Dad soaked it in as though Melissa's performance were their own victory. She's always been special, Mom purred, her gaze slicing toward me. Dad chuckled, patting Melissa's shoulder, proof that good roots grow strong, some branches just rot. Melissa tossed her curls back, laughing, some branches shouldn't even exist. Their words struck like stones, but instead of shattering, I smiled, small, deliberate, enough to make Dad's expression falter. He didn't understand it, but it unsettled him. That night, while they celebrated with champagne, I slipped into Dad's office. His desk was cluttered with contracts and unpaid bills, but I knew where to look. I'd watched him hide things, smug, certain I was too stupid to notice. The locked drawer, one I'd memorized the code to, yielded exactly what I expected: documents, transfers, names, dates, fraud dressed as business, hidden accounts. Mom's signature was everywhere, Melissa's name, too, listed as beneficiary in accounts she probably couldn't even explain. I sat with the papers, my hands trembling not from fear, but from clarity. This wasn't just humiliation or insults, this was leverage. This was how I could make their world collapse. For the first time since the hospital, I felt alive. I returned everything to its place, careful, invisible. They would never know I had been there until it was too late. At dinner the next evening, Mom lifted her glass, glowing with pride. Dad leaned back, smug. Melissa basked like a queen. Then Melissa turned to me. Still sulking, "Don't be jealous. Some of us were just born to shine." I smiled again, steady, deliberate. Her laughter faltered. Dad slammed his hand on the table. "What are you smiling at?" I met his eyes. "Just thinking," I said softly. "Some crowns are heavier than they look." The table fell into silence. For once, my words hung heavier than theirs. That was the moment I knew. The breaking point had passed. They thought they had buried me. They didn't realize I had already started digging their graves. The silence didn't last. Dad scoffed. Mom refilled her glass. Melissa reclined with her smug smile. To them, I was still the weak one. They couldn't imagine my smile was the start of their undoing. And over the next weeks, I played my role perfectly, cooking, folding laundry, bowing my head while they sharpened their cruelty. They grew comfortable again, Careless again, certain I was too broken to fight back. And that's exactly how I wanted them. What they didn't know was that I had already copied everything in Dad's locked drawer: bank records, forged contracts, transactions under fake business names, Melissa's college fund that wasn't a fund at all, but a front for laundering, Mom's initials stamped beneath signatures that tied her to it all. I didn't go to the police right away. That would have been too easy, too merciful. I waited. The perfect stage came 2 months later at Melissa's celebration dinner. She had just been offered a scholarship, paid for with stolen money, of course, and my parents decided to host a party in her honor. The house was packed. Neighbors, church friends, family acquaintances, the same people who whispered behind my back when my parents paraded me as their failure. The living room glittered under the chandelier. Champagne flutes clinked. Melissa basked in the center, her sequined gown catching the light like she was born for it. Mom lifted her glass, beaming, "To our shining star, Melissa, proof that good roots grow the best fruit." Dad chuckled, patting Melissa's shoulder. "Unlike some rotten branches we should have cut off long ago." His eyes flicked toward me, cruel, daring me to flinch. The laughter rippled, safe, smug, behind their champagne. That was when I stepped forward, calm, steady, a folder in my hands. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the noise, "I have something to add to the toast." The room quieted. Smirks turned my way. Melissa rolled her eyes. "Don't embarrass yourself." I opened the folder. One by one, I laid the papers on the table. Bank transfers, fake contracts, Melissa's name tied to dirty money, Mom's signature on fraud, Dad's accounts bleeding funds that were never his. Whispers erupted, sharp and low. "Are these real? Her name's right there. That's a government seal." Dad lurched forward, his face red. "Where did you get this?" I met his fury with calm. "From your drawer. The one you thought I was too stupid to notice." Mom's hand trembled as she grabbed at the pages. "Lies. These mean nothing." But her voice cracked. The mask slipped. Phones were already out, flashes, pictures, messages flying. Melissa's face drained of color. "This isn't funny. Tell them it's fake." Before anyone could speak again, sirens wailed outside. Blue and red lights painted the windows. Gasps rippled. Someone dropped a glass. The shatter rang like judgment. The knock on the door was hard, final. Officers stepped inside. "Mr. and Mrs. Langley," the lead said evenly, "we have a warrant for your arrest. Fraud, money laundering, forgery." The room exploded. Gasps, shouts, the scrape of chairs against hardwood. Dad's face twisted, spittle flying as officers cuffed him. "You did this. You think you've won? You're nothing, nothing." Mom clawed against the officer's grip, mascara streaking down her face. "Please, this is a mistake. My daughter set us up. She's worthless. She's always been worthless." The officer didn't blink. We have more than enough evidence." Melissa collapsed onto the couch, gown crumpling, hands shaking. "What about me? I didn't." The officer read from his notes. "Melissa Langley, you are also under investigation for benefiting from stolen funds." Neighbors watched wide-eyed as the Golden family was marched out of their own celebration in handcuffs. The same mouths that once laughed at me now whispered with horror and a hint of delight. And me, I stood still, silent. For once, the laughter wasn't aimed at me, it was aimed at them. On the porch, as the cruisers pulled away, Mom wailing, Dad cursing my name, Melissa sobbing, I didn't smile, I didn't need to. Because I knew. The womb they said should have closed years ago was the one that had just birthed their downfall.